Nailed it.
Seems like we're all in frame, yeah? Hey? Okay. Hey. No, it doesn't want to work. There, yeah? I hope it's getting audio.
Is that? I mean, I see the thing.
I see yours for sure. Hey. No, we're going to make it work. So, as we usually do, we'll just get it started. So, hey, I'm Bob.
I'm Jake.
This is Chris. And we are
Nailed It the podcast.
Welcome to the first episode of 2025, Season 3.
Yeah, that is the crazy thing. That is, we're now in this 3 years deep,
right?
And this was all just because we were bored and wanted to start a podcast, and we are now officially two-time
CPMA nominated podcast.
Which again, insane. We did not think that was going to be a thing.
I mean, to be fair, it's not the same as having, and not to talk down on it. We've done enough of that in the last year. It's not the same as, say, being nominated for Songwriter of the Year or Artist of the Year, because there's a lot more competition. There's less local podcast competition, but still, we're in a pretty good class of people as far as that category goes. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not confident on our ability to win this.
Oh no,
there are definitely better podcasts than us, and I know that's defeating, but it's just nice. How we said last year, it's an honor to be nominated.
I almost said honor to be nominated.
Yeah, that's what we said last year. So, very, very cool. So as we said, we have a guest here. He's our friend Chris Scheler. He's local everything. You've been doing this for a long time, but I mean, obviously a local musician, songwriter. You've got a lot of things going after. I think you had a little bit of a break there for a while. You weren't really doing too much music, if I remember right.
Yeah, it wasn't for a few years. Yeah.
Well, let's just roll it back.
Sure.
I'll start it with I don't remember the first time we met, but my first real time around you was the Tuck It days, back in the 2001-ish range. That's when I started, and I had met you guys and saw you guys play before I was even playing shows. So that's as far back. I mean, we're talking, unfortunately, 20-some.
Oh, my God. We're getting old.
Not unfortunately, I shouldn't say that, but it was 20-some years ago now. So that was my first time seeing you doing anything, singing, playing. But obviously, you must have been in music before that, obviously. So why don't you give us the Chris Scheler family history?
Like the bio?
Give us your give us your bio from when you were just a young tadpole.
Nice.
Or as far back as you'd like to go.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on.
Oh, sure.
Always.
Yeah, and congrats on the nomination.
Thank you.
It's quite an achievement. I know you're downplaying and you're selling yourself short.
A little bit.
You always like to. I know you like to give yourself a hard time, but yeah, it's a cool thing you guys are doing. That's quite an achievement to be nominated for something like that.
Thank you.
But yeah, to take back, I guess, a little look back on my musical history. Really, I started about the time that you're talking, when I was in Tuck It, which was back in. I think we got started in 2000.
That's about the right time.
Yeah, so I had been playing guitar for a few years. That's it. Like I had like 2 years of lessons, and I never really got in a band when I was in high school. Although I take that back. I was in a band with my brother and another friend.
That's how it starts, right?
Yeah, we never it never quite left the basement, but it was fun. We had a little list of covers that we would do, and then we'd play for like an hour or so, and it would end with my brother and I getting in a fight, and then we'd go about our day.
So you weren't like playing at a young age or anything like that?
No, I picked it up. Picked up the guitar when I was 15. I started fiddling around with it, just kind of by ear, power chords, and kind of picking up riffs, like listening to the radio.
I still do, yes.
Yeah. And then I took some lessons. I don't know if you remember Trader Jim's. It was in downtown New York. Took lessons there for 2 years, and yes, I did nothing for a few years, but besides the basement stuff, and then I turned 21 and started going out and checking out the local scene. So it started out with my high school buddy Rich Blymeyer, who you know, Jake. I don't know if you.
I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to meet Rich. He's not. He's a family man these days. You don't see him too often at weddings and funerals, unfortunately, at this age. But yeah, Rich and I ended up playing together for a long time after that later on. But yeah, so you went to school, Rich?
I did. Yes, we graduated from Dallastown together, and like I said, we were just checking out the local scene, and he played guitar, I played guitar, and we're like, hey, we should start a band because like it looked so much fun.
I can attest to that. I'm. It's rare that I'm around anybody that remembers that scene like
Yeah.
that. It was. I try to tell him all the time because he was not even in diapers then. I don't think. It was. You could go out any night of the week,
Yeah.
any place, and see like live entertainment. Usually a full band. Tuesday, it didn't matter. There was something to do, and there was always people around. It was so different back then.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for me. I'm like, why am I not doing this?
Right.
I would see some acts. I'm like, well, I can't be any worse than that. That was how I started. And my friends were doing, you know what I mean? Like I saw what a good time it was. And man, I wish those days were, at least for the fact that people just discovering new things. It's a completely different time anymore, but we'll get there. Continue, sir.
Yeah. So, yeah, there were a lot of bad ones, but there were a lot of good bands too. And it was surprising. We were surprised. Like we would go into a place like Fat Daddy's, good old Fat Daddy's, and the stage was good, the sound system was good. They had a nice light setup, and the bands in there were really talented.
Yeah,
and we're like, you mean people can just like do this? Like, and so we're like, we got to get in a band, and then we ran into our friend Scott Reisinger, who also graduated with us, and we would just we'd go see bands like all the time, like you said, and finally we got him in on it. Like I think it took us a while to discover like he was actually a drummer. I remember he was in band and stuff in high school, but I didn't.
You had no idea he was like into playing in a band.
Yeah, like rock music or anything like that. So the three of us would get together in Scott's parents' basement. We started out with we didn't have a mic. None of us were trained singers. Rich and I would kind of take turns singing. So we went out to Radio Shack one day and bought these two like $5 mics.
I had one of those too.
They were terrible.
On them.
Yep. And it was awful. It had like a 1/4-inch plug
plugged into like a stereo.
So it did. Yourself. Yep. And I don't know. I think we must have plugged it into one of our guitar amps that had a second input on it or something. My goodness. And then we get back to Scott's parents' basement and we realized there's no you got to put these things on a stand,
right?
Because we're playing guitar. We can't just sit there and hold it. So you're gonna love this. We took we didn't have a mic stand, so there was like a music stand lying around. Wow. And we put it like on a chair, and like I think we like duct taped the microphone to the music stand.
Hey, necessity. Mother of invention.
I love that
so
much.
That's great.
That was our first like band jam session. And then we're looking for a bass player, and we were looking and looking. Finally, we ran to our good friend Bill Schweitzer, who we lost recently.
Yes, we did. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Good friend, great guy, great bass player.
Yeah. Good people. Just
good people, great bandmate. But we knew Bill. He didn't graduate with us, but we graduated with his brother, Scott.
Yep.
And
another Scott.
Yeah, we were talking to him at Fat Daddy's. Just we'd see him out in the scene, and he wasn't in a band or anything, and he kind of overheard what we were doing, and he's like, well, hey, why don't you let me like try out for you? And we're like, okay. Well, we kind of got to know him. I didn't know him that much through Scott, but we had met in passing. And
right.
And,
he's give him a chance.
Yeah, he's a real personable guy. Had a great sense of humor, and he loved music, of course. So we jammed with him a couple times, and it just clicked. So the four of us did that for a few years, and until we didn't.
So you didn't, and then what after that was 10-pound package.
10-pound package, which was that also involved Scotty Reisinger and our friend Sumo, right. And a guy Vince Quintella who was in the band Silver Tongue,
which still exists.
They still exist, yeah.
In some form, they still exist, but I don't. That's a topic I'm not going to get to because that's a whole nother thing that could get a whole episode about. We could probably do a whole episode on what happened to Silver Tongue.
Right,
anyway,
we probably could.
That's not what we're here for. I do remember. I remember that being like in Tucket was fun. You guys, I look back and say you guys are playing stuff I had no interest in Tucket.
Yeah,
like I didn't appreciate like a lot of the pop punk sensibilities and stuff that was going on then. I was more of a hard, and still am, but it's more of a hard rock guy then. And it took me seeing you guys more and more to start to appreciate it. But what I really liked was your songs, your original stuff you were writing back.
Oh, thanks, man.
You have a very good gift for a hook. It things that just there's songs that have stuck with me from Tuck It through 10 Pound that just I still remember the choral refrains and stuff because it just stuck with me that I enjoyed that. But I mean, every band back then was doing some kind of original stuff in their covers.
Right. You could
But
kind of do that back then.
you could
kinda
get away with it,
mix it in.
but not all the originals were good. Not every band had good originals, but they got away with it by playing covers. I mean, our
Right.
band was a prime example of that. But I do remember 10 Pounds seemed like the logical thing when you go to another band. Sometimes guys just have something going on that's good, and then it breaks up or things happen and you get another group and it just you never get that back. But 10 Pounds seemed, at least for knowing you and Scott from, seeing Tuck It, it seemed like that progression up. You guys definitely took a next step up with what you were doing, although still doing a lot of the same things musically.
Yeah, it's
but
very
it seemed
similar.
like I don't know if that was because of the inclusion of Vince, because I know he's a very good musician.
Yeah.
And personality wise, I don't know. I mean, Sumo is what he is. Sumo's my good buddy. I talk to Sumo every day, but it just the dynamic was different. I felt like the band, it was. I don't know if it was just the way you guys were portraying yourselves or everybody after a couple years, and that was only a couple years, right?
Yeah.
Fuck, it wasn't that.
It seemed like we were around for a while, but really we were only together for maybe 2.5, 3 years.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
I don't remember it being that long.
It probably wasn't even 3 years. It was probably more like 2 years. So.
But 10 Pound didn't stay
No,
terribly long
we
either, right?
we were only together for like a few months. It was almost like a side project.
It was
and
a good project. I mean, in my opinion.
Thank you.
It really, regardless of how, wherever it ended up, or where you got, all different paths.
Yeah.
That could have been at the right time, right place. That could have been. I feel that could have been a band that might have got noticed had it had gotten the traction, but I think in that middle of the road time when we were all doing, that's when I think things started to. I think we were all coming over the top of like that. Really, as we said, you could go out anytime and see anybody anywhere, and there was a point there as you got to the mid and sort of late early 2000s that everything just started to. People stopped coming out and things changed, and I don't think any of us noticed it at the time. Right. But looking back on it, I can remember a very hard decline in like attendance and people even caring, and a lot of people in our age group were like, well, there was a lot of DUIs all of a sudden started popping up, and everybody was getting older and smarter and got
this
kids.
Before Uber.
Yeah, things happen. I get it, but I think I've always felt like 10 Pound might have been something more had the opportunities been different or the timing been different for you guys.
Yeah, maybe more the time. Yeah. And well, like you said, it was kind of like that we were doing a lot of the same material. And for me, I know I kind of got sick of it. I got sick of it. And going back to what you were saying, how you weren't really like into that pop punk sound necessarily. I wasn't either when we started Tuck It.
I wouldn't have known that, but now that hearing you say it now and knowing like the type of stuff you write now too, I think I know where you're more, probably where your musical tastes lie more, but I wouldn't have known that then. I would have assumed that was your jam.
Yeah, and it kind of became my jam because the other bands, well, I'll say I would credit our drummer Scott Reisinger for kind of getting us into that, like Blink-182, Green Day.
He did the same thing.
Yeah,
10 Pound ended, and we brought him into Instant Transmission. He's like, first things first, no more all this hard rock stuff.
Yeah,
we're playing Blink or we're not playing. I'm like, I don't think I agree with you. And I think it took 1 or 2 trips out with him to see Emily's Toy Box, who I at the time didn't care for because I didn't like what they were doing, and Negative Space, which I didn't like what they were doing, and turn around, I ended up being like a groupie for that band for a long time. But I understood. I think I had an epiphany moment where it doesn't matter necessarily if I 100% like these covers, if everybody else does and we're having a good time. And I understood that some of, especially the Blink stuff with Scott, you know how he was.
Yeah.
But, he was right. And he learned that from playing with you guys.
Right.
Like that.
Well, and we learned it from him too. And
you play the stuff that people enjoy, as long as you're not like feeling crushed, your soul's not being crushed by it. I think that's where I started to learn that lesson of, if I'm going to be in a cover band, I better be playing stuff you want to hear.
Right.
Because playing stuff for yourself, you might as well just write your own music. Which was a lesson I was actually given from one of the guys in Green Eggs, of all things. I asked them one day, why are you guys been doing this so long? You know, you're obviously all talented musicians, and all you play is like the most, danceable, easy like covers. And Brad said to me, if I wanted to get the satisfaction of doing what I want, I would be playing anybody else's music.
Mhm.
He goes, but I get the satisfaction of entertaining people, and
Right.
you have to give them what they want.
Well, it's a different job, and you got to understand the assignment.
Right, and there are some guys who do not. But those are also the bands that I don't think persevere. But if you figure that lesson out early, if that's what you want to do, or partly what you want to do, then so be it. And I think the rise of a lot of themed bands now, you know, your decade themes bands that seem to be out a lot, or tribute bands. I think that's a lot of guys figuring out that this is stuff people want to hear, as opposed to just randomly picking something. So, but this is how I get on my tangents about going. Now we're talking current,
and that's the scene now. It's a lot of tribute bands and 90s, 2000s,
2000s, 80s stuff
80s.
Was hot for a minute, but even that, I think it has definitely squared itself into the 90s, which is I'm fine.
Yeah.
That's where my comfort zone is, both vocally, and I find myself going back to 90s music in general, not just rock or alternative. I was a 90s hip hop guy. Like, it was just, it sounds like I'm sounding like an old man saying it, but music was just better then. I think it was the last time that there was some really, I don't want to say creative. That's disrespectful to people that make music now, current music. But I think it's the last time there was just like 10 or 15 years of just solid, all the time music was good.
Right.
Even some people's worst was still pretty good. Nowadays, Jake, you can attest this, and I don't mean, again, no disrespect of doing things with, but you can release a song at one a week if you want every week now, because it's easy to do at home.
Right.
And I think it took some of the feel of getting an album and hoping that all 10 or 11 tracks are going to be awesome, or you don't have to wait for that anymore. Now, if someone puts out an album, you've already heard all those tracks, so they release them once every 2 weeks. And I don't know if that's better. I feel like some of the music now isn't better because of that, but that's just my old man opinion, I guess.
Yeah.
The grayer I get, the more opinions I have. I understand my grandfather more.
Well, I would agree with you on a lot of that. In my taste in music, I love 90s stuff as well. And I did like going to the record store, buying the CD
physically
or the cassette.
Reading the booklet,
reading
and
the whole
holding
thing.
Your hands. It's not, and I still do that with certain artists that I really like. I'll still buy a CD if I have to buy it at a show, which I like to do, or I'll order it because my car still has a CD player in it. I can actually listen to them without having to stream stuff. But for the most part, it's a dying art.
Yeah.
Physical media is a dying art, and I think that took some of the luster out of.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that there's not quality music.
Yeah,
out there.
I like a lot of music that's out these days.
Yeah,
it's different listening to it.
Well, it's a different. You consume it different. We all consume stuff different, and I don't know. I think that just made it different in how it's perceived a little bit. I think, and I think that's maybe why I think there was that era of time. You know, you go 1990 to 2005 or so, 2006. There's album after album after album of just across genres. It's really good stuff, and I don't think that's necessarily the case since then.
Right.
And it's made one or two good albums a year. There's countless jokes about like 1992 or 3. There was like every week of the year there was some amazing album.
Yeah, exactly.
Your Pearl Jams, your Stone Temple Pilots, or like all that stuff that just came out. We didn't realize how important they would be at the time. We just knew we liked them, but it was like every week there was something new, and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
But that also informs where my musical tastes come from and what I like to do. Obviously, what you like to do. Jake weirdly is informed by like Alice Cooper and anything from the 70s and early 80s. I don't. We joke about this all the time, but it's a weird thing with his generation. I say it because he is young enough to be my son. That I've seen that a lot where they gravitate towards stuff that was old to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's funny.
So it's
like I think of that sometimes. How like you remember the Beatles were released like the Beatles rock band, and that kind of introduced them to a whole different generation of people.
Right.
And like kids these days, like my boys will listen to like classic rock sometimes. They like newer stuff.
Right.
And my high school son, he likes hip hop. But
New
he
hip-hop?
liked when. What's that?
New hip hop?
Like newer stuff.
He's the generation for it. I definitely would sound like an old man. I don't get it. But anyway.
he plays bass as well, and he'll appreciate
the low end, the riffs that are in hip hop.
Yeah,
that's built around drums.
But he'll play. He's working on like beats too. So I think working on bass kind of is helping him to have like
A
you know,
foundation.
yeah, exactly, with musical. But he'll play like Black Sabbath stuff. He'll do. I'm trying to think of he just like a lot of classic rock they're into. They're both like into AC/DC.
I can see that,
Um,
and which is I guess is a good thing.
Yeah,
I guess I didn't have a musical upbringing myself, so I mean I got into it pretty much about the same time I met you. I mean that's when I started getting into it. I always listened to music, but I wasn't interested in performing it or anything. So
right.
I was just I think my musical uh, tastes or what I was into and what drove me into stuff was formed by just the radio. Like there's a lot of people who are like, well, my dad listened to this album, so I listened
Yeah.
to that album. I just literally turned on back in the day. I turned on 98 YCR,
Right.
and I listened to whatever pop radio. I think that's why I have a big love for 80s, like not necessarily pop music, but I guess
Right.
it was. But like I'm a huge Huey Lewis fan.
Oh, I love
I
Huey Lewis.
I love and appreciate at least early stuff like Michael Jackson, like
Mhm.
the people that were at the top of their game.
Right.
Then that stuff holds up because it's just written so well. It sounds dated sometimes, but it works, and that's I think that's why me personally I'm drawn to being in like top 40 type cover bands. I just want to play a little bit of everything for everybody because we can all have a good time. But that doesn't work for everybody. And your kids found the fact that your kids can find a way to tap into something that was old before we were old. You know what I mean?
And I compare that to like I wouldn't listen to like my grandfather's music.
No, I'm not going to put on some.
You know what I mean?
I'm going to put on my top four, my 1940s jazz albums or whatever. Right?
But that's
Big
what
Bob.
I mean. They're listening to their grandfather's music, basically.
And insane that we have to think about it in that time frame. Like, what's that joke about how I forget it was something about the moon landing is closer to the 80s than we are now.
Don't.
Like in reverse, like I
Like,
remember when that was a big deal. I mean, I wasn't alive, but we still talked about it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the fact that
man.
Yeah, you're right. We wouldn't listen. Well, technically, we may listen to our grandfather's music if it was like if our grandparents were to like early Cash and stuff like that.
That's true. My grandfather did
But
Johnny Cash.
Not everybody was. Obviously, that was a different time for music in general. You're almost shunned for liking rock and roll back then. But yeah, I like that. That's very cool that your kids are. Well, first of all, I know you're. I can clearly see from the social medias your kids are musically inclined.
They are,
which is good. And you, especially now knowing that it wasn't something you grew up with.
right.
I honestly would have just assumed you played an instrument when you were a kid.
I didn't, but we always my parents love music. There's a more of a musical side on like my mom's side of the family. Her mom and her mom's brothers were very musical.
It didn't appear for you one day.
Gotcha. It didn't. It kind of my parents didn't really play anything, but we always had music on in the house. There's always a radio on. Everybody's always singing along. And my siblings and I sometimes will like kind of reminisce about it, would kind of make fun of like how my dad would on Saturday mornings he'd be like making us breakfast and like just whistling along to the oldies and singing along to it and stuff.
No, I mean
like super loud and we're like just waking up.
Dad, come on, we're trying to
But I mean he was similar. I think I get my love of music from him a lot because I'm like we talked about Open in the records and he was very much like that too. He still has all his old records. And he would get into like who's in the band, like where are they from, like what other bands were these people, and I'm like that too. Like I like to know basically useless facts that aren't going to get me anywhere in life unless someone some rock and roll Jeopardy someday.
Right. Yeah.
But
I've always joked I'm full of useless knowledge, but sometimes I forget things I'm supposed to know. So.
Right. But it's like I enjoy that stuff, and I think I get that from him, kind of that kind of like deep detail of like research on bands and that kind of thing.
Let's we got tangential again.
Yeah.
This is our whole show.
Yeah.
For those that have listened, this. So you went from 10 pound to was that I completely blanked on
the Secret Six after that.
Secret Six, yes. Which that I remember you pushing pretty good. At the time I believe you were working a little with Mike Brambilla. Were you working a little bit with him and trying to do a little booking? And because we had also started working with Mike a little bit to try and push stuff, or maybe you were helping him design stuff.
Yeah, actually, I was helping him. I forget how we met. I guess just through mutual friends. He had like a video company he was working on. This was when he was with, I don't know, what was this system? What was it, World's End?
World's End, yeah. I think he was still at World's End.
Yeah, I think it was near like kind of the tail end of when they were frequently gigging.
Right.
And a friend of mine and we helped him with his website, and he was doing some booking.
Yeah. Yep. Okay,
So
that's what
that's-
it was. I knew there was.
yeah.
I think you might have done some logo design for him or some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember because then he was. It cross pollinated with him putting your stuff, as you guys as an artist or a band that
Right.
he was
Yes.
dealing with. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Actually.
Yeah, as I told you,
Yeah.
I remember things that
Wow,
never served me in life except in an interview. You did, and then after that, was that you and Vince as well?
Yes, Vince stayed on for that, and we met John Dirk.
Oh yeah. Oh
we,
man, I
we,
forgot about Dirk.
We met him. He was in this band, Huge Ass. I
Yep.
don't remember.
Yeah,
They were
actually,
just-
our guitar
Huge
player,
Ass,
our
yep.
guitar player Rich and Ghostlight Radio Show was at Huge Ass.
Oh
as
no
well.
way!
Yeah.
I don't remember if I met any of the other guys in that band.
At some point, you probably saw Rich play because everybody remembers Rich being a zany guitar player who had a bunch of different like funny hats he would wear. He was also in a band called Sight Unseen for years.
That sounds familiar too.
Yeah, I would almost guarantee you saw Rich play even if you
Okay.
never met him. He's much the same guy except there's no hats now, just long hippie hair, and he builds guitars like this beautiful thing behind me on the wall. But yeah, he brings up Huge Jazz a lot because fun. I just think that's a hilarious mid 2000s name. For
Yeah.
a band. Like perfect bar band.
Well,
But,
is that almost like we mentioned Silver Tongue, that Huge Ass? Is that like another like Simpsons reference, kind of like a Bart prank phone call or something?
It must be. It might. Well, I mean, it does definitely fall under that category for sure. Maybe that's where they got it from. I never really thought about that, but that would have been well. At this point, anyone who's ever been alive has been alive at the same time as the Simpsons. Apparently, they've been on the air for 57 years or
Right.
something now. I don't remember how long, but yeah, that's very possible. That I mean, it definitely works as one of the Bart calling Moe's prank calls. Can I speak to Hugh, please? Hugh Jazz.
I love that. That'd be like
Classic.
that'd be like my next project's gonna be called Mike Roch.
No, don't do that. That's. Well, I mean, go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah,
That
that's
seems a bit extreme, but I guess in the world we live in. So I think I was jumping at. Was it Man versus Mars? Am I jumping too far ahead?
Yeah, I was. Yes, I did that after
That was after
the Secret Six,
Okay,
but
yes,
there was kind of some time there.
I knew there was some time you weren't doing
Yeah,
anything.
Vince and I were doing our acoustic thing for a while,
Right.
and that's I forget. I think we were still doing that when I joined Man versus Mars.
I was going to say, Man versus Mars. You became a part of, right? That wasn't
Yes.
something you started.
No, there was another band, and I actually met these guys on MySpace.
Oh no!
So, yeah, I replied to they had like a MySpace ad, and they had like a profile of like a page, and it had, you remember how you could upload your song?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it had 3 songs on it, but like no lyrics. And I'm like, well, this sounds pretty promising. Like the music sounded good, and it was a little punky, but like a little more kind of like pop rockish, but
Gotcha.
hard to tell without a vocal at that
Right.
time. So I went and met with these guys, jammed with them. They needed a singer and a second guitarist, so that's kind of what I was going to do. And we played in Lancaster. This was with jumping ahead again, Sean Groff, a guy I've played with. I'm currently playing with him, and I played with him in a couple acts. It was his house in Lancaster, and we had the singer was Jimmy Benowit, and we had this other dude on bass. And the one day it was kind of working out. I wasn't like officially in the band yet, but I was like, okay, these guys seem cool. The music's good. It was a good hang. So I'm like, I'm just going to keep doing it. So I show up one day, and like the bassist never came.
Huh.
And like the week prior, we decided we were going to like learn some covers. It was an original band.
Right.
And he didn't want to learn covers, so he just like didn't go.
Yes, the dreaded original versus cover guy.
Which is, I mean, understandable if you don't want to do it at all. Like it's one thing if you, okay, hey, there's one song or 2 songs I don't like playing, I'm going to suck it up for the rest of the team.
Right.
Right.
But it just totally wasn't what he wanted to do, so it was understandable. So I'm like, well, I could play a little bass, and there was a bass there, so I just played what we had been playing because I was just doing power chords. So I'm like, just
Didn't
translated.
change much for you,
Yeah. So we did that for a couple weeks, and then I show up one day, and they're like, we kind of like what you're doing. How about you just keep playing bass? I'm like, okay.
And now you're a bass player.
So now I'm a
you're
bass
singing
player, and I totally I have a bass. Like I owned a bass, but I wasn't really a bass player. I was a guitarist who also learned had a bass because I wanted to learn a Red Hot Chili Pepper song or something.
Makes sense.
I
can't play this. What guy can I try and be just like? Well, Flea seems like a good place.
Yeah, it was a good place to start. That's funny the way you put it.
Well, but that's what we all reach for. Like, well, I want to play this instrument. I wonder if I can do what that guy does. Nope, can't do that. It's worth a shot.
Right.
I'll start back here.
Yeah.
Here is a root note.
Right, and that's what I was doing for a while, and then we both, me and Jimmy both sang. So Jimmy kind of became. They had written some stuff beforehand, so instead of the lead singer and second guitarist, I was now just the bass player.
Right.
But I did sing some songs too. Like, so he would sing the songs he wrote, I'd sing the songs I wrote, and then sometimes we'd co-write and we'd trade off here and there. And it worked out. It was fun, and I didn't mind. I like singing, but it was cool. Like I got to sing a little, but then the bass at the time was new for me. So
it was something different to be doing.
Yeah, it was something different to be doing, and I was trying to not be the guy that just played the root notes. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think there's a sometimes that suits the song.
Right.
But I was trying, for my own enjoyment, to just kind of do some, walking bass line and do some cool licks and fills and stuff.
So you were. It was a teaching moment.
It was a teaching moment and a learning moment.
Right.
Got to work on tightening up my harmonies a little bit. So
now I've found that just in the short time since Jake joined Ghost Light Radio Show, and now with Dave Z joining the band, just these last couple months, the fact that there are two other singers in the band now,
that's cool.
That I don't have to sing every song. I can move away from my microphone.
That's awesome.
I can maybe concentrate on playing a little better, but it gives me more time to focus on not just playing and singing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice. Like I wish I'd had that. I joked years ago, I wish I could find a band just to be the rhythm guitar player so I could get better.
Right.
And I realized I would drag that band down when I'm trying to learn. It would have never worked for anybody. But I have that similar experience now that I'm doing something. I get to do something that isn't always just on a microphone.
Right.
And I get to work on, again, some harmonies when he's singing or Dave's singing, or I can just play to work the crowd without having to talk to them. Things of that nature that you get a different thing to do.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to me when I started playing guitar, which is only 10, 12 years ago now. Songs that I said I would never sing again in the cover band because I was so tired of them. When I had to learn to play them, suddenly they had a new lease on life and I didn't care anymore.
Right.
I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm playing those songs again because now I get to do something else while I'm singing them. So it is kind of nice to get out of your pocket, your comfort zone, and do something like that. And opportunities like that don't happen for everybody, especially not as kind of organically as it sounded like it did for you.
Right.
So
and that was just total kind of dumb luck. And
right. One guy not wanting to do something, so there you were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was also like out of my comfort zone, and it was the first band that I joined that I didn't already know somebody in the band. Because the first thing,
strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah, the first time was high school buddies. The second time, it's like, okay, these other people I met on the scene.
High school buddies.
Yeah, but that was 13th and 14th grade.
Yes.
And then, after that, it's like, okay, well, I'm starting a new band, but this guy's also going to be in it. That was in my last band, and then
a lot of rollover. Yeah, which has weirdly been a lot of my experience up until a certain point. It was just kind of some of the same guys rolling over because not everybody was ready to quit. But once you get into it, is weird getting into a situation with all new people.
Yeah,
Jake, you've had that happen too.
A couple times, yeah.
But you find that it works or it doesn't. I was lucky most of the time. Every time I was in a group with guys that I didn't know everybody to start, it worked out at some point. But eventually I end up bringing in people I know either way.
Yeah.
But I guess it's all about comfort too.
Right.
Sometimes getting out of your comfort zone is great. You do learn new things, but music tends to be better if you're vibing with the people. And that can happen with strangers.
Right.
You can certainly get in a groove with people, but how long did that last?
I don't even remember.
I don't think it was all that long. I remember seeing you doing some shows and I never got a chance to see you guys. I feel like you might have played like some Chameleon gig?
Yeah, we
might have done
did.
some decent gigs, and I just
Yeah,
couldn't get
there were a few gigs and far between. For one thing, it took us like 2 years to kind of get going. I don't know why. I don't know why, because
could have been that. It also could
this
have
is
been a little
before-
bit of the scene change. Too.
maybe, and I know sometimes with an original band, it's harder to find appropriate gigs because
Right.
you're either playing. Sometimes a good place to play original music can be hard to get into because
Right.
they're bigger shows. But we're in Sean's attic every week and just sitting around drinking beers,
Jamming some songs,
jamming some
stuff.
songs, and sometimes we would like take a little field trip to like the comic book store before we get started. It was weird. We had a lot of time. This was before I had kids. So.
It was a hangout sometimes more than it was a practice session.
It was, but we always worked on what we intended to work on.
Right.
But we just never got serious. There wasn't somebody that really took the reins to be hey, I'm going to be the one booking the shows.
Right.
They just we kind of had opportunities here and there, and one of them was the Chameleon.
I for some reason that obviously again with that knowledge that it's serving me today.
So
I remember thinking, man, I wish I could play the Chameleon.
This is funny. It's kind of like the opposite of like every other band I'm in. It's like you take any gig you can get, or you're open for a friend's band, sometimes to like 10 people. I've had first shows in a friend's basement.
Lord knows, yeah.
But our first show in this band was opening for Bowling for Soup for a sold out crowd at the Chameleon. So,
oh my goodness!
So it was.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, it was one of those. But hey, we were ready. We were like together playing for like 2 years, but to do a half hour of music, we were prepared.
It wasn't like you got together the week before,
right?
So you had some time to work it out.
Yeah, so it wasn't like we really had to like cram or anything. So
that's cool.
That was exciting and it was a great experience. There was also happened to be on my wife's due date for our firstborn son Ezra.
Oh,
but he was born the week. She's like, no, you have to book it. But he was born a week early, so
so you didn't have to rush out of the show. Hey, thanks for the gig. I gotta get somewhere.
No, but it was worse because I had a newborn at home and it took me like forever to get home because we got to like hang out with Bowling for Soup afterwards and it was, looking back, I probably should have just like shook their hands and like took my gear and just went home. But
well, it all worked out.
But it did. And he's doing okay. So.
Yeah, he's doing all right. You're all right. You didn't lose any dad points. You might have lost a couple husband points that night, but
temporarily. I think I redeemed myself.
Yeah, you probably did. Two more came along, right? You should be fine.
But lesson learned.
Yeah, and now with the kids, did the kids kind of slow down what you were doing musically? Is that a big reason?
Yeah,
for the break you had.
Yes, and I don't mean to say that in like a blaming way.
No, not in a negative light, but like all people.
Life gets in the way, and I'm tired, like at that point, like I'm not.
People get tired from having children. That's weird.
And that's kind of when that every once in a while, like I didn't leave Man versus Mars at that point. That was just our beginning.
Right.
We just didn't play a whole lot. I had to kind of tone it down on the practicing. I'm like guys, I've got a newborn. I can't come over for 4 hours on a Sunday anymore. every Sunday.
Right. You might need to make a better schedule.
Yeah. So it was like, if there's something to prepare for, we'll get together, and then every once in a while, if we need to jam, we will.
Yeah, little therapy session of jamming.
So
that's necessary.
So yeah, that's about the time I stopped playing. Vince and I kind of stopped playing together, our acoustic duo. But those were tough gigs. We would play like our most common gig we would play was you remember the old Tailgaters off Queen Street?
Yeah, I played there once or twice myself.
Yeah, it was those were Sunday nights was when they did acoustic, but it was like we'd play from like 9 to 1 or something like that. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
On Sunday night, yeah.
I just couldn't.
God, 1 o'clock now seems like a nightmare.
Yeah. And I just couldn't do it. And
Makes sense.
And once we kind of like lost Tailgater, that was sort of our main
like regular gig.
Yeah, that was like our steady gig we had, and we kind of like just kind of fizzled out.
Fizzled out.
Yeah.
Now you went from that to just your. I'm probably jumping ahead, and maybe I'm missing a step. But you basically went into when you came back through. Or like I said, I remember a couple years there. I sporadically see you playing acoustic gigs alone.
Yeah.
Pub on the Trail.
Yes,
Rest
that's
in peace.
yes.
Places of that nature. But that's when
maybe
you
it's
started.
maybe we're bad luck for these
I
places.
could be, or we're just out. We're outlasting them.
Yeah.
You started writing more, correct? You got
Correct.
back into writing.
I did, yeah. And I think part of that was from I needed that musical outlet, and I didn't necessarily have the time or the energy to get together with a group of people weekly to prepare. So I'm like, well, I still have a guitar.
You can still write.
Yeah, I still can write, and I enjoy writing. So why not kind of go with this for now?
Well, and that would be more where your experience comes in than
Yeah.
mine in this, because you also find that time that you can just sit and kind of write stuff out.
whatever, whatever I want.
And that without having a band there for it.
Right.
That's never been my strength in any way.
Well, and even like if you're doing an acoustic act, even with covers, it's like you don't have to coordinate with other people's schedules to be able to practice. You do it when you are able to.
Right. You're on your time then,
Right.
which actually might make it that much better in a certain aspect.
It does, but then it's like there's no accountability really.
Yeah.
Is the song done? It'll be done when I say it's done.
Exactly. Yeah.
I always found a very similar interest in that. Like when I would sit down and write my own stuff, whether it would be, my original music or, the new stuff I just put out under a different project title, it's all written by me. And I don't have to worry about, what if the drummer doesn't like this part? What if the bassist doesn't like what the guitarist is playing? Or what if they don't like what the lyrics are about? It's just what you want to write about.
Right.
So I fully see that side of things because I do it all the time. Aside from being in original projects with other members, I have that little outlet that I can write whatever I want to write. I want to record what I want to record and have nobody else to worry about other than myself.
That's not a bad way of being able to do things, I would think. Like to have that, like you're right, there's no accountability. You can forever mix something, I guess, and you're never happy with it. Or, I heard that from a lot of guys who write their own stuff that you finally have to just let it go because you can't hold on to it forever. But also, if it's something for you, why, whether people are going to hear it or not, I mean, I guess that's the end all thing. You want people to hear the music. I guess that's, in some way, that's probably almost better. I guess to better your songwriting, maybe. Like I'm sure bouncing ideas off people, having a producer in the big league, any of that is helpful. But when you're writing the stuff, it's all your thing, and it's only going to make you realize what you're doing or not doing right in your own eyes. I guess I'm speaking out of turn here because I really don't know.
No,
but I do know you did end up going into probably the best studio with the best guys that this area has ever produced.
Yeah.
Atrium. So, and it's amazing to me what going to a studio at that level with guys that know what they're doing can change in a very, I've never heard a negative way from those guys, but I guess in general, a good producer or mix, recording will do that. But when I heard that first song you put out from them, I'm like, everybody should have this kind of production.
Yeah, that's not something I did myself.
Right.
So.
But it was still your song.
Right. Yes,
but
it was.
Having that outside influence or opinions or just guys that, hey man, I assume you probably got did you think of trying this or that kind of stuff. I've heard nothing but I've met those guys outside of the place, but I never got a chance to record with them, sadly. Now I'm beyond the money for that. Those guys are booked and worth every penny. There was a time when I could have had a whole album done for them for like $700, and I was like, I don't have a whole album.
That would have been a great deal.
Yeah, now maybe I can get a day with them for $700. We'll record it. We're not mixing things. Yeah. Just stuff. Get out. We have big bands coming in later.
You got to hang out in a cool studio for
but I mean, how was that experience? Like,
it was awesome.
It wasn't your first studio experience, obviously.
It was not. It was not. But just rewind here a few minutes.
Sorry,
we're talking about like the doing everything yourself. I got so lucky. Well, what you guys were talking about is kind of what I was intending to just kind of write it myself. But I got really lucky that I collaborated with the right people. To get feedback on like the songs.
So you definitely let other people hear them
I did, and I'm so glad I did, because you might remember like a few years prior to that, like back in, I guess, 2017, I kind of put out my own
I do remember
thing. I did it all myself, and I did have a guy mix it. But I tracked it all at home, and I didn't have any feedback on the songwriting. I'm like, this sounds good to me. I'm happy with it. But
that. Well, that is a big step for any musician I've ever met to be. And again, Jake can speak on this more than I can because he writes all the time. But if you're happy enough to let something go out,
right,
that in itself, I think, is probably a pretty big step.
It felt really good to do that, but then I went to this place called Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp.
I remember that.
Yep. Yeah, and it kind of really changed my whole approach on the whole thing. The camp is about like meeting like famous dudes that you look up to. Like I got to jam with some of the guys from STP and some guys from Alice in Chains.
That, yeah.
But that's kind of why I went. But there was all this other like workshop kind of stuff too. Yeah, learning, and you learn from like industry pros. And I got some feedback on like a song I did and kind of self-produced. And like the thing I heard the loudest was, "Don't mix it yourself. Have somebody else do it." He's like, "You did all this. You played all the instruments, which in itself is a great accomplishment. But what you did it in like GarageBand or Logic, you can give that file." You probably have a friend that can do it,
right? That
can has the training that can pull things out that are already in there. And I was like, that's really good advice. So when I got home, I looked up Think Loud Studios because I knew that was in York. I'm like, I'm swinging for the fences here. That was like owned by the guys in Live,
right?
Some of the guys in Live, and I'm like,
beautiful studio.
Yeah, and it was.
I got the opportunity to play up there and do a.
That's right.
That was the first time that we jammed together. There?
Yeah, he was actually there to take. I knew he was a musician. He was actually there to take photographs, and we got him to sing and play. But we got to tour that studio and see that when no one was there. And
yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
That's the most professional thing I've ever been. I mean, I've been in some studios, but that, wow,
it makes me sad every time I pass it now. That's not a recording studio anymore.
It's not. What a waste.
Yeah,
what a waste of a building and a cool spot.
Yeah.
But I digress. You were.
But so I filled out their form, and it was like there was this checkbox. Do you want do you want to work with Carson and Grant? And at the time, I didn't know who they were, and I'm like, okay, because I just wanted to see like what would happen. Because I guess if you didn't fill that in, you're okay. You can come in, use our facility, but you're bringing in your own engineer or something. So they got back to me, and they're like, yes, and I was like, oh, that's awesome that like they're accepting me. But I'm like, oh, they're because I'm going to pay them. Like they'll take anybody that'll pay.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't get into my merits here. They want my money.
So they sent me back a quote, and I was like, gearing up. I had a couple songs that I thought I could take in, and my wife Amanda was like, you should have Jason Greenwood. He's in Collinsville Discount Band. He's a longtime friend of ours. Yep. Have him do the guitar. Like I can play guitar. I can do a lead, but it would be some bullshit octave thing or like a not one string melody.
Just enough.
And she's like, "You're spending all this money. See what he says." And I asked him. He's like, "Oh yeah, that'd be awesome." And and then I got this guy on drums, Robin Diaz, who I met at Rock Camp. He was drumming for Live for a while.
I was gonna say that name's familiar.
Yeah.
To me, yeah.
So he was Live's drummer Chad Gracie was like injured right before they had like the reunion. I hope I'm not saying the wrong thing here, but apparently he was rehabbing from an injury, so he was touring with them still. But Robin was like they had two drummers at the time, so I think they had Robin to like do the fills that he wasn't ready to do yet. So we kind of hit it off with him over. Just talking about York because he had lived at Think Loud because there's like living quarters there.
Living quarters there,
while they were preparing for that tour and everything. And I got, once I kind of set everything up, I messaged him. I'm like, hey, just want to let you know, man, I'm going to be recording at Think Loud. And he like writes back. He's like, what's your number? And like he calls me, and he's like, hey, who's doing your drums? And I was like, well, I've got this, like program I'm using. He's like, oh, come on, man, that's stupid. Let me do it. So so I hired him. and he's got his own like studio in his house. It's all like mic'd up and everything. He does a lot of session work, so it's all like
ready to go.
It's ready to go, and he has an engineer that comes in sometimes, and so the way we did it was I would send him like my just scratch tracks, just me vocals and guitar,
right.
maybe a click, and he'd do like 2 takes, and they were awesome. Like he'd send them back. And I would send stuff to Jason. Like I'd send him like I'd kind of mix down to like a wave or MP3,
right?
And he would throw leads over it, and like we'd kind of pitch ideas back and forth that way. And we never played the song together one time before the studio, and I totally I always loved Jason's guitar playing, so I totally like trusted what he was going to do.
That's awesome.
So we showed up. And of course, it's an immaculate studio, and first, and we were setting up the drums for 2 songs because I had these 2 songs. Like I was going to do one that day, but we were like, let's process, like kind of pick out all the drums because we had multiple takes,
right?
And we spent like hours just going through the drum takes, and it was kind of painful.
I'll bet.
To get that all kind of locked in, and it was kind of like a learning experience though, because like next time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna kind of pick out what I'm gonna use beforehand
and save yourself that time
and
aggravation,
right? Because it was like a very painstaking thing, like, hey, let's do this, but okay, we're gonna use this take on this measure and stuff. So it was meanwhile every take was awesome, like it
so you had to pick from a bunch of awesome to
down
to more awesome.
But it went from like, okay, the first time that I worked with him, he sent me like 5 takes until like the most recent he'd send me like 2. And so I can kind of work that stuff out ahead of time now. And then
awesome.
And those guys were awesome. Like you said, they would say, "Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that?" They've had me like rework total like melodies of lines and stuff to where I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't imagine what this song would be like had I not gotten someone's feedback on it."
And I'd heard that about them before. Our friend Dave, when Bullet Method recorded with him, back when they were known, but they were still kind of getting their feet wet.
Yeah, I do remember that name.
And Dave said the same thing. He'd go in there and be like, "Why don't you try singing it like this? Try singing it like this guy. Try doing this. Give this a shot."
Right.
And I didn't have enough. Still don't have enough studio experience I never would have thought about that. That's what you're paying them for. Sure, you can just pay guys to record your stuff and mix it and move on.
Right.
But if you're paying guys to help you produce it like that they're and those guys clearly have a pedigree for getting stuff done right. So
they do.
I think that's, and the fact that you could see, you would, like you said, you wouldn't have thought to go those routes, or that wouldn't have come up. I mean, I guess that's the opposite side of the holding it in for, doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm. You
have someone's opinions and collaborating, and you'd clearly collaborating, just to write the stuff, much less having these guys. So that sounds like it was probably pretty good. It sounds like that whole experience, starting from the School Rock, the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp.
It kind of almost was like School Rock.
Yeah, up through that was like this big learning experience.
It was
to help you get that stuff done, and those songs sound great.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and it was like the first time I didn't cringe hearing my own voice.
Well, I'll never not do that, but that's just me. But most of my stuff is just hearing myself play back live and wondering, did it sound like that? I don't think it sounded like that.
I know what you mean. And then like sometimes you're like, oh, okay, I sound okay on this song, but then like you hear something else and you're like, man, I was like totally flat on that.
But in the room, they didn't know, so I guess I'm supposed to stop being hard on. This is why I'm afraid of live videos, Jake. You love live videos.
I love doing live stuff.
And I'm like, there's no taking that back. If someone's watching, they're going to hear it all.
Well, and you're aware of the camera if you're not used to doing it.
But the paranoia of that has to go away at some point, or what's the point of doing the shows?
That's true.
Because I've never played a perfect gig in my life, and I imagine I never will.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone does. You can have some really good ones, and there's some professional people out there, but nobody plays it like the recording. Like, it just doesn't.
Right.
It's just not how life works.
Right.
So I should get over it, I guess.
Yeah.
Try it. You're full force into kind of doing your own stuff now, pretty much. Now you're doing. Didn't you get it? You did get in with another band though, didn't you? Or at least.
Yeah. So I was started. I had been doing solo acoustic for the last, I don't know how many years now.
Right.
But after doing that, those songs with Atrium, I'm like, I got to play these songs with a full band because they're not, like, I'm a solo person, but they're not really like singer songwriter type of songs.
No one's getting the full breadth of the song
Yeah,
without
yeah.
hearing it. Yeah,
And like some of them I've been able to play, you know, just with an acoustic guitar and it's fine. A couple of them I've been able to rearrange, but then some of them I'm like, I just haven't been able to
find a way to make it work with just you.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, you know, of course I can get through the song and it's, you know, in the right key and everything, but it's like
missing
missing something.
The things that make the song.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little boring.
Right. Well, a guy is acoustic. Trust me, I know what that's
about. But yeah, so I started with a couple years ago going for Launch, the music conference in Lancaster. That was kind of my goal. I was like, hey, I'm going to submit to Launch because I had gotten in the year prior as an acoustic guy. So I tried the next year to get in for like full band, and sure enough, they invited me. I'm like, oh, I got to get some people. So within like 6 weeks, I got a group of guys together to play the song. You know, it was a very small set, but still, it was like there was some of the guys I hadn't talked to in a long time. Most of them I had never played with before. It was one guy I had never met. So luckily it worked out. But that's the good thing about the internet and social media these days. You can kind of
network those things and see what people are doing. Yeah,
like like in that case, the one guy Andrew, who I still play with, he was able to, you know, listen to my stuff and I was able to go on his Facebook and kind of see like a couple of videos he put. I'm like, man, this guy's good. So it was like, I knew it would work out before he even got there, because he was introduced to me by our bass player Chad, who I've known for a long time. So I'm like, if Chad
brought him into
it, I know he's probably like a good hang, you know. So,
right. Which clearly it worked out for you.
Yeah. So what were we talking about?
Where you were putting that band together?
Oh yeah, the band. Yeah. So so it worked out. We did Launch. Then we did Love Drafts. We were able to get in on a bill there one night, and it kind of then it got a little stale. So now it's like now I'm back into the Man versus Mars thing, where it's like the opportunity. Like I'm trying to find the right opportunities, because it's tough, because like a lot of the gigs are not like paying gigs, and it's like, you know, I want to pay these. It's my name on the song.
But you want to make sure that they're compensated.
I want them to get something, and it's like, well, and they're happy to do it because, you know, we're all friends now and we like playing. But I don't feel right just being like, hey, how about you come out on a Thursday night and, you know, come play my songs. My name is on the.
Buy yourself some beers and go home. Yeah.
But, you know, I try to get, you know, something for them, and I try to buy rounds and stuff to do at least something. So at least it's a good, like, fun time for everybody.
Well, that's good. I mean, you got to enjoy it, right? I mean, obviously, it sounds like they're into it. They appreciate the music enough to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Did I see you doing cover work again too?
Yes, and it's playing with the same guys. We're in Millennial Mixtape.
I thought so. Yeah, I couldn't, for some reason, the name was eluded me for some reason, but I could see like a picture from the internet of you guys on stage. Tell Us maybe somewhere, something like that.
Yes, we did Tell Us on New Year's Eve. We were the '90s band that night.
So that's essentially what you're doing. 90s stuff?
90s and 2000s.
Okay.
So it's Millennial Mixtape, but it's also kind of like Millennium in that it's the sweet spot's kind of like late 90s to early 2000s.
Yep.
So it kind of, but we can kind of overlap different decades too. So we did the 90s thing, and we haven't done like a straight up 2000s thing.
Well, I figured that's what was going on when I saw the bill, because I know Tell Us likes to do the stuff for the decades on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
I know our friends at Y2 Kids play.
Yep, and we play with those guys. Yep.
So I had a feeling you guys were at least doing a 90s set, but of course I figured that, knowing what you liked,
right?
And your album does very much have a throwback kind of 90s. You know, I don't want to say grunge. I mean,
yeah, well,
it's not.
It's okay if you do.
I mean, it is, but it has a very
a cleaned up grunge,
a cleaned up, like an alt rock grunge kind of feel. Like the not too grungy stuff from the 90s, but the stuff it wasn't too pop. It fits right in that. There was a band that jumped to my head when I listened to it. I'm like, this feels like this. It's not Pearl Jam or STP.
Yeah.
It's not Blink-182. You know what I mean? It's not. But there was a specific, and I for life me can't remember at the time. At the moment, I'm like, this might not be what you were going for, but this is the vibe I get.
You got to let me know if you
Oh, I have to think about
if you think of
I
it.
forget who it was now, but it seemed to me like it just, in a general sense, it fit there. It wasn't too dirty, wasn't too clean. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It had that you could have put that out in 1995 and it would have fit right in with everything that was out then. You know, or that's how it felt to me. I can't remember what the album was now. God, it's going to bother me now. And I'm just now remembering that whole conversation with myself, clearly. What band was it?
Was it like somebody random, like Oleander or something like that?
No, I mean, not like that, but it wasn't like one of the heavy hitters or the stuff that I know probably influenced you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I guess the overall point of that was it felt like it belonged there, but it also felt like it's something that was recorded now. Like
Gotcha.
It felt like a modern throwback. Is that comfortable?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, that's actually kind of what I was going for, because those 90s bands are like what really influenced me the most.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't want to seem like, okay, this guy's stuck in the 90s. But I think part of that has to do with maybe the producers as well.
Well, the timing of that now too is nostalgia is huge.
That's true.
So writing a current album that has a 90s feel is actually, you probably couldn't have picked a better, last couple of years, probably a better time to write something like that, because that seems to be a very big thing now. There's a group of people coming up in a certain age group, and I point to Jake's age group because that's what it is. It's not necessarily him. It seems like that. What I hear at our shows when we're playing covers from that era, those eras. Oh, that's the stuff my parents listened to when I was a kid, and that's why I like it. I know all these songs because I heard them in my house all the time. Like, they know that music, whereas we were listening to it as teenagers, they heard it as toddlers,
right?
Because their parents, who are our age,
right,
were listening to it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a weird thing to be in it that long, that the stuff that was influential to us as kids is stuff that they grew up on, not because it was their chosen music at the time. It was because of what their parents were listening to, their parents' friends, or their older brother, or whatever. So right now is almost a perfect, like I'd say in the last 5, maybe 10 years tops, is a perfect timing to have a throwback feel of things, even modernized, because there's a market for it. There's an ear listening for that kind of thing.
True.
So I think your timing, unknowingly, probably was perfect for it.
Yeah, I would say unknowingly. I mean, it was just like I wrote songs that sounded like what I like to listen to. There was a lot of nods to my influences there.
I think that's, I mean, again,
but I was trying not. I didn't want to, try to be
those things,
do an impression or.
Right.
But you can, like, if you listen closely to certain lines or melodies, you'll hear it. And even classic rock. I have a song called "Deal with the Devil," which was the first one I recorded with Atrium. It kind of has like a very simple driving bass line to start out, and then it has this like riff, like a heavy guitar riff. And I was thinking more like, I was trying to kind of go for like a vibe, like an Iron Man or a Smoke on the Water, just kind of like a simple like arena rock kind of riff.
What's wrong with that?
But then I mixed, I kind of mixed my like grunge influences in with that, and there's some very like quiet and clean parts to that song.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's why it doesn't necessarily sound like a 70s era song, basically, because it does have that alternative kind of feel, because it's got a little bit of like the clean has some like delay and some like
it's definitely as a whole, as an album, that song in particular, you're definitely sitting in an alternative, I think, spot. But again, I think it has a modernness to it that still doesn't date it. So, and if there was, again, you were writing what you were influenced by, what you like, what you wanted it to sound like, and it just happened to be that. And I think it worked. If that was your goal, to get something that shows what your music is to you, or what you want it to be, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's exactly what you were going for. And that's what I felt like when I listened to it. Like, this is Chris. This is what I would expect from, oh, that sounded weird. I expect you to write it.
Young man.
This is what I would have expected from the album in a good way. Like,
gotcha.
Without having a preconceived notion of what you're going to write, I think that's what over the years I've realized that's, especially I know you do have a love for STP and those guys and stuff like that. I knew that, and like I said back in the day, I would have just assumed you were a pop punk guy,
Right.
And I still did till you corrected me tonight. I mean, to a certain point, but I know at some point your sound moved away from that anyway.
Yeah.
Before I heard that album, so I think if that's what you were going for, I think you did it masterfully. So,
Oh, thanks, man.
keep doing that. You got
Thanks.
any more? You got any more coming?
I do, and actually, yeah. I mean, I have. So the last single I did, I released in 24. It was called "Lonely Memories." I have when I had. I'm still working with Robin on drums, so he'll. We kind of have a system down now. So like,
Hey,
well,
I
he'll
sent you a file.
yeah.
Okay, here's your drums.
But yeah, exactly. It's that simple. But I try to send him a couple songs at once because it's easier for him. He's got everything set up.
Right.
I've got another song that he tracked for me that I wrote at the same time, and I've just been kind of sitting on it. And I don't know why. Like I didn't like parts of it, so I'm like I'm rewriting, and I'm like, now that Lonely Memories song will just be kind of a standalone. So now I've got enough to do like another EP, like enough material. But I have like all these unfinished ideas out there.
You got to find some cohesion in them.
I do, yes.
Put them
so
together before you go.
Yes,
put them
the
down.
cohesion is a good way to put it. So I'm going to say about like a dozen songs that I'm like, they're at various levels of completion. Some of them are just like, okay, maybe it's just a chorus, but I really like this. I want to use it.
You have to piecemeal
And
it somewhere else.
yes, and then I have a couple songs that they've got the whole structure, they got lyrics, they've got, the bones of a song, but maybe I'm not sure if this is the one that I want to put on, because if I'm doing an EP, it's going to be like 5 songs. So it's very, if you have 12, you can have a song where you're like, okay, this one didn't work out. I'm not crushed.
Which one of your children do you pick?
Yeah.
First?
But with 5 of them, it's like I feel like, and back to your what you were saying about the model being like the releasing singles every week. So, if I'm going to release a couple of them as singles and then an EP, it's like I feel like because there are only a few of them, each one kind of has to be its own hook. Like each one has to be like I think able to stand on its own as a single. Like
right. Well, that's fair. I mean, that's the. Well, I mean, I guess in essence, isn't that kind of what anybody would want?
That yes,
like you want every song to be the song.
But I do, yes. Right, I'm trying to like swing for the fences for each one.
Well, why not?
But I do have on my last EP there was a song that was like 5 minutes. There's like 3 guitar solos in it. It's not like a jam band or anything, but it's.
Well, I mean,
there's the song called for it. And,
well, that's again, not the beauty of writing your own stuff or music. You can scratch the itch.
Yeah.
For a certain type of thing if you want, because it's at the end of the day, it's still yours.
Yes.
Especially if you're not. I think all of us. I don't care what anybody says. I say it all the time. I'm not looking to be famous. I'm not going to be on cover songs anyway. But I just like doing what I'm doing. But if I write a song and McDonald's calls tomorrow and asks if they can use it for a jingle, I'm going to ask where I can sign.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you want people to hear your music as many people as possible.
Yeah. Well,
there was a lot of people that would call that. Obviously the word sellout used to come up a lot more than it does now. But I don't think that's a thing anymore, unless you're selling your principles for some reason. But to want to get your songs heard by the masses, that's kind of like the dream, isn't it? Like, hey, absolutely. I hope you enjoy this as much as I enjoyed making it, that kind of thing. So sometimes you got to swing for the fences, right?
Yeah, one of the songs we actually got on The Young and the Restless was kind of like a slower one.
Really?
Yeah. It's called Good Old Days. So
I did not know that.
It's more of a ballady one. Right. But it's funny because I'm like, okay, I found out by chance, like I happened to be looking at the site where they like announce where
songs will be.
Yeah, they didn't tag me or anything, so I'm like,
I
just happened to look at it that
day.
Right. I'm like, oh, cool. So I'm like, it was like the day before. So I'm like, okay, where is it? So I'm like pulling it up online, and I'm like going through all the scenes, and like I'm like, where is it? I'm like, they told me it was in there, and then
they made you watch an episode.
Yeah. Amanda's up in the kitchen on like her computer, like going through, like, and she's like, "Hey, get up here! Here it is." So what happened was, they're in this like cafe or something, like it's coffee shop. There's like, there's a people are talking. There's dialogue. There's a jukebox box playing. I can hear my song in the jukebox, but it's the instrumental version.
And it's in the background.
It's in the background, but also there's this dramatic piano building up because it's getting really
like the score of the episode
like
on top of your.
So like I could like you can hear it for a second, then all you hear is like the snare. So it's like there'd be no way you would know it was there if you. Like, there's no way somebody's like watching it and be like,
I heard that song in the background.
Yeah, what is this song? I got to know what it is.
No, I assume it rolled at the credits. It would have rolled through and stuff.
I don't. No, it wasn't in the credits. I think they'll list like the person who's like the music director or something.
Oh,
like that.
okay.
But it was listed in BMI sent me a check, so I'm fine with it. And it was kind of a funny story because it's like this thing. It's like I've been working half my life to get my music out there to an audience, and hey, we had this awesome opportunity, and it's here. Here it is behind two different things,
underneath piano and talking.
So we had a good laugh about it, but it's
still a thing that happened to you. And put it on the resume. That's all I say. And
Jason and I were talking about we're eligible for a daytime Emmy because of it. Not eligible, not nominated.
Right, no,
eligible to be nominated. So we're joking about how like we got to go rent our tuxes and stuff like that.
Have to fly out to the daytime Emmy.
Yeah.
To accept our award for our background song with no lyrics. I'm the guy who sang that song. You didn't hear any of that.
Right. The one with the good snare sound that was
the snare and the piano that's not on my song.
Right. That was us. Yeah. Totally.
Remember that diner scene in that one episode? Hey, you know what? Again, it makes for a good story.
Yeah.
But also, it's something you have. It's something that was done.
Right.
I mean, that's it's nice to have you build memories off that stuff too.
Right.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't playing it on Saturday Night Live or something, but it's something you can say that you did with your music. Someone picked your music to do that.
Right.
And that's a pretty big thing.
I think and I'm like now I recognize that and I appreciate like the achievement, and had it happen 20 years ago and I'm, gearing up to watch the episode, I would have been crushed.
Right.
I'd have been like, this is what happened. But now I'm like,
well,
I'm mature enough to have a good laugh about
it. With age comes wisdom, as they say. So, I mean, again, I probably went the same way. Had it been years ago, I've been like, well, what was the point of that?
Exactly.
Like, why do they waste my time? But I might still say that. I'm jaded sometimes. But
right.
No, but I mean, you the fact that you got to have that experience at all, like, the idea of having to sit down and go through it like on the laptop,
like an ear, literally ear right next to the speaker.
But that story that paints this visual in my head, you know what I mean? Like that's just so it's got a funny like way about it, just that you had to go through that to find it, but you did get to do it.
Right.
So
that's true.
It definitely makes for good timing. So but you definitely you got something coming. You think you're gonna? Is it any timetable on new stuff? Just
absolutely nothing. There it is again, the zero accountability.
Right. When you're ready, you're ready.
Yeah. Well, I hopefully this year.
Well,
like, at least
it's January. You got a little time.
Yes. So I just gotta call some people up and get scheduled. I don't know that Atrium's going to work out because they. I was trying to get in at the end of last year, but they were just.
Well, now that they're down at Rock Lidditz, which is actually Jake works in that complex.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you just told me right before.
My neighbors.
Yeah. So, I'm glad I didn't say anything bad. Like,
that place, they should have stayed in York.
Yeah, nothing but good things to say, and that's an awesome studio too that they have out there, and it's kind of cool that I've only known those guys a few years, but I've gotten to see several iterations of what they've had going on.
Right.
I mean, they've had they were at Think Loud. Awesome studio, and then COVID hit.
Yep.
And we had another song scheduled, and they had to kind of cancel everybody. And,
right.
They called me months later, and they're like, "Hey, we're getting everybody back in. We don't have Think Loud anymore. It's that's when it was like shut down.
Right.
And they got another studio out in maybe it was Palmyra. You said you're out in You said you were near Palmyra. Who was that?
Lids.
Oh yeah.
No, but
they had-
the other one was Palmyra. I think
They were somewhere interim. I remember
Yeah.
hearing before Think Loud, or not Think
it was
Loud,
called.
before Rock Limits had their studio for them.
Yes.
They
yes,
were
yes.
Yeah.
somewhere after.
It was Seventh. I think it was Seventh Wave Studios or
Might
something
have
like
been,
that.
Yeah, Palmyra sounds right.
But yeah, I did a song there with them, and it was funny because I was the first vocalist to track with them at that studio. So I got there, and there's no vocal booth.
No.
So I went from this and I'll show you some pictures later. This immaculate vocal booth that they had in their live room,
Yeah,
where
I
it was
was in
actually.
it.
Oh
I
yeah,
went in there and just yelled as loud as I could to see how much it
was it the Kanye booth?
Yes.
Yeah, they called it the Kanye.
Yeah.
That was apparently it was Kanye West had
West.
rejected.
Yeah, he was not interested.
So yeah, I better get that.
That might be your wife.
Yeah,
Feel free. Feel free.
Yeah.
Um,
But anyway, I'll tell the rest of the story and then I'll call her right back.
fair enough.
But anyway, so I'm in this immaculate booth, and then we get to this studio and there's no booth. So he makes this makeshift booth. Grant does this. He makes it out of just I don't even know what they were. I think they were cubicle dividers. So he's stacking them on top of stuff, and he's kind of making sure it was secure. And he was like, I mean, what it did, you could hear the two songs and that I recorded in those different booths, and you wouldn't tell the difference
because they knew what to do with it.
Yeah, they just needed to kind of
God,
deaden the song.
professionals.
Yeah, and
The professionals and hellish musicians too. Jeez, they're good.
yes, they're very good.
Yeah.
But then, I got to record with them there, and then at their new place at Rock Limits. So
Excellent.
awesome guys.
So, anything are you got any shows or anything coming up?
Well,
Anything that you want to promote?
February 28th, we Millennial Mixtape are playing once again with Y2 Kids.
Oh, okay.
We'll be at Double Barrel Roadhouse in Red
Yes.
Lion.
Yes.
And we're the openers. We're the '90s group, and they are doing their Y2K thing.
Yeah,
so
have you ever played in that venue at all?
I have not.
Have you
I've
been
seen.
in there?
I've not been in there. I've seen pictures. I've heard great
Yeah,
things.
we played there. Ghostlight played there a couple years, right after they opened. It's probably one of the better rooms in York County. They really did a good job there, so you'll enjoy yourself.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
No, you're not doing any solo stuff right now or anything like that?
Not really. I have some stuff. I haven't booked my acoustic yet for this year. It's funny. I see everybody posting, "Hey, this is where I'll be this year," and it's 200 dates, and I'm like,
that's kind of where we are with the full band. We have pretty much nothing left.
But
I
wait until February. There's I play a lot at Avenue Ale House at Heritage Hills, so I kind of they've been very good to me. So I kind of wait till I book with them for. There are a couple I got a handful other stuff.
You take those and then you work around.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I get there.
Right.
And then after that I'll be hitting it hard. I'm starting to put out some feelers for some acoustic shows, and I'm trying to get us into some other show. There's a couple festivals I applied for. Some other original stuff. So
cool, excellent. Yep. Well, keep us posted. Obviously, we're interested. I need to get out and see you do the original stuff.
And likewise, I haven't seen you. Well, I saw you do your solo thing.
Yeah,
but I need to see you guys play.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot more duo gigs.
Yeah,
which is just generally more fun. I like playing alone.
Yeah,
I said playing with myself, and that just doesn't sound right.
It's
phrasing.
I like playing alone, but it just doesn't. It's not this. I'm too used to the band dynamic.
Yeah.
And I realized once he and I started doing gigs, as I had done with Dave for years and BJ, it's just nice to have somebody else there to bounce off of.
Exactly, yeah.
So in the places we can afford to be there as a duo, we'll continue to do that.
Right.
But I still have some solo gigs. I still book the fall.
It can be lonely.
8 weeks.
It really does. It gets so lonely.
Yeah.
Especially if nobody's there and you're doing it on a Tuesday night
right.
like I do. If no one shows up or you're the background music. Which essentially you can be as a single acoustic guy.
Yeah.
As soon as you put a dynamic into it with those other people,
it picks it up a little bit with the excitement.
There's banter, there's different songs, it makes a difference. So
one other thing I learned about that is you can easily be the background music.
Oh yeah.
But I think you have to understand the assignment in those situations, because I came out here to eat a meal. I didn't come to watch a rock concert.
Yep.
And then, at the end, and I say that, and I know that to be the the truth, but I still go and play gigs where I'm like the background music, and I'm like, man, this kind of sucks.
But you know it. You know when
So
your brain tells you that's what you're going to be there to
that's
do.
what you're there to do. But then still at the end, like if you hang in there and do your best,
Right.
I'm not. That's a baseball coach in me.
That's right.
You've got
Kid.
you'll have people come up and they'll be like, "Hey, I liked it." Like they were listening to you the whole time. They just were having a conversation while you're in the background.
Yeah, no, yeah. You're surprised if people go, "Oh man, you're really great. You had a really good time." Or in our situation, sometimes people come and drop a bunch of money in the tip jar that we thought were in the back, just scowling at us the whole time.
Yeah, right.
Like, oh, they actually were enjoying themselves. Not that I'm, you don't know it sometimes. And then there's other times that room's just there to. We've had gigs, and I've done solo gigs where just everybody's just into it.
Yeah.
Like immediately, there's just a group of people into it.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a good time for a couple hours. Let's just have a good time then. I'm not background noise anymore.
Well, it could be a song you play that gets everybody.
Oh,
yeah. Like, that, for me, that's always Blister in the Sun. As sick of playing that as I am, like,
he hates this.
I hate that song.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ones I had said earlier that like I was like I'm never going to sing that again, and then I had to start playing it. And not that it's a tough song to play, although I completely forgot the chorus. Somebody yelled, "Can you play that?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, what are the chords? I forgot the chords of the chorus. It's nothing. I just could not, I couldn't lock in on probably because I was like, why are we playing this? But it is. You're right. There's songs like that. I've said that every time we play My Own Worst Enemy in the full band. At one point I was so tired of that song, and I'm like, look at all these people having a good time.
Exactly.
I don't care anymore.
How do you think Lit feels?
I'm not. Yeah. Like, you guys know we have other songs, right? No, you don't. Don't worry about it. You do not, sir. Yeah. It's all about the reading the room too.
Right.
In any situation, single or full band or whatever, original act even. Sometimes you can feel there's a vibe going one or the other, and then that's probably is even worse than doing covers, because if you feel like the room's not paying attention, that's got to be somewhat disheartening.
What's happening here? So
I don't know.
Are we seeing us from the past?
I think we're looking at us from the past now. Yeah,
we got a whole Spaceballs scenario.
When will then be now?
Yeah.
Soon.
When?
That was weird that it just started doing that now.
I do have to check my phone, by the way. Is it okay if we take a pause?
We can absolutely take a pause. You go right ahead. That's what they make editing buttons for. In the meantime, while Chris is checking his phone and speaking with his wife.
Yes. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
We'll get our usual thing. Jake has been, as he always is with guests, very quiet this evening.
That's what I do.
What's been happening since the beginning of the new year for you?
Well, we just had our show over at the Goose.
We did play down the old Naughty Goose in Northeast.
Yep, we had our what was it? That was our first show for the year.
Yes.
First show for the year for both of us, or did you? No, you had a show beforehand, didn't you?
I played the Falls on Tuesday.
Yeah, I would say you were at the Falls. That was my first show for the year. That was a fun show.
Right. It was.
For it being January down
in
by
Northeast
the bay,
Maryland, with freezing the ice on the water and everything. It was a good show.
So cold, but it was fun. Released a new song.
You did?
Under a new project called Big Happy Fast Mother Monkey.
Your names. I know you've already actually on air, I believe, explained this name. So we are.
Yes. So this was a project that was the brainchild of my brother, where he for years was like, I want to do this project. I want to do a Mother Monkey project, and it never really came to fruition. But with me recording the way I do, I had written this song, and it's the one that I had sent you, the AC/DC style song.
Yes.
And I wanted to release it, but I didn't want to release it under my solo stuff because it was so different with that like classic rock style.
Right.
So I was like, well, why don't I release it under the Mother Monkey name? And that way it's not fully tied to my name, but I wanted to put something out.
Fair enough.
So the debut Mother Monkey song, Crank It Up, is out now. And from reviews I've received, it is a liked song. I was very proud of it because it was something different. It gave me a chance to sing differently, to play differently, to just kind of do things a little bit different.
Nothing wrong with that.
Other than that, Liz Dexia we're still a thing. In the process of, getting in a more routine practice schedule, getting some new songs worked on, recording, and eventually we'll be releasing some more music. The goal is to have an album out by the end of the year.
Excellent.
And then other than that, nothing entirely new. I now officially own a PRS, which is something I never thought would happen.
Welcome to the club, son.
Ugh. I feel like I shouldn't like it, but I love that guitar.
Well, that's what happens.
So
That's
shout out
what
to my buddy
happens.
Brian for selling me that PRS. But yeah, so other than that, I don't think anything else is entirely new since the December episode.
Well, that's good. We're into a new year and new things. Like we said, we got a lot of things we're gonna do around with this here show.
Yeah,
More episodes than just one a month, and
more
some miniature
episodes.
episodes, more on remotes, and clearly more guests. Our friend Chris has returned. Chris has returned, everyone.
Hello.
Yay. Everything all right? Good.
Everything's
Going on?
fine. We're just
Excellent.
making sure my daughter will be picked up.
No, that's good. That's good.
So yeah,
Well, I don't think we're too far off from done here anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you have more going on, Jake, than I do. So, obviously, our Ghostlight Radio Show gigs we're on a little bit of a hiatus. We're off until the 28th of February,
Which is insane. I don't know what to do with myself.
because we had 2 gigs change dates, and a venue had to close due to the LCB for 60 days, and we had to move our date. So we kind of got light. Yeah, it's weird. When we're playing every weekend now, we have off. I don't have a musical thing to do until
the 21st.
the 21st.
It's you and me at the Naughty Goose.
Oh, 22nd.
22nd.
Here's your
22nd.
chance, man. You got to get some writing.
Yeah, right. I should. Well, we talk about this. He sends me songs. He sent me quite a few songs, and we just never seem to come together on them.
Yeah.
We need to stop screwing around. and
Yeah,
get some stuff
we
done.
got some stuff to
He's
do.
got many ideas, and once I have for me, writing's always been, because I couldn't play an instrument at the time, I would get songs in my head and lyrics and melodies, but I couldn't really translate it.
Mm-hmm.
So then when something would be written, I just changed my lyrics to match that, to meet
That's great.
But I'd like to be able to. I can now express things better, but he sends me such good stuff. I don't think I need to instrumentally write anything.
That's cool. Yeah, I think I've learned recently, and I've only learned this trick the last few years. A lot of my favorite songwriters will kind of write their melodies around the music that exists. Like they'll do the melody first, and then, like you said, kind of change the lyrics, or they'll start with no lyrics at all. And actually, I heard Rick Rubin say this. A lot of times, the vocalist / lyricist will start with scat lyrics, and then they'll work around a couple phrases, and then the story becomes like, oh, what could this be about? And then it becomes like a crossword puzzle.
I'll see. That's a great analogy. I never really thought about it that way. I've talked about this on air and many times with people with songwriting. For me, it is, I feel the need to tell this complete story.
Yeah, I
but
get the same thing.
You can't tell a novel in a poem.
Right.
You need to cut it down, and I never know what to cut out to still convey the same thoughts. So I never feel right about what I've written enough to make it work. I feel like you almost have to simplify things lyrically to get your point across, but without losing the story. I don't quite know how to do that.
Right.
Other than write like really repetitive, easy stuff that, sure, you can write hooky, catchy stuff if that's what you want to do, but if you're trying to get something across, I've never mastered that. And again, because I don't do it enough, my confidence level is way in the floor.
I think that comes with just doing it more and more and being comfortable with cutting things out and not getting your full story across, and then the listener actually
has to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, they interpret it their own way,
which is great. I mean, again, it goes back to the things I listen to, but I listened to a lot of 90s hip-hop when I was young, and at least that era of hip and rap, they wrote a very concise story.
Right. But well, yeah, you knew exactly what they were doing.
They had
that
bar
day
after bar to go with that. They could take as much time in a verse. They didn't have to sit to that almost structure that you need a song to stick to for timing. So I think I learned from the wrong people, kind of like, well, they're getting an entire story out here, but they can put a lot of words into a small area.
Right.
You can't do that when you're seeing things
Yeah, you don't want to be too wordy when you're
Yeah,
singing.
yeah.
Yep.
So it's lessons I understand. I just haven't been able to apply. And I've heard the changes with Jake's stuff over the years we've been working together. Just in your lyricism is getting, you're figuring it out.
I'll agree and disagree with that because I will always say I'm a horrible lyricist. I will sit there and write a song like musically, instrumentally, from start to finish, no problem. But I can't like because I always write songs with the intention of leaving space for lyrics. Could not tell you anything I want to write about, which is also with what I was mentioning about writing differently for Big Happy Fast Mother Monkey was I wanted to write differently. So I wrote, and as you said, having a phrase or something, I wrote the pre chorus for this song before writing the song. So I had that phrase and just kind of built off of that. And once I had, okay, so this is the pre chorus and these lyrics fit really well here, I can kind of build around that. And it is, like you said, a crossword puzzle, figuring out, okay, this works really well to go into the pre-chorus, and oh, this really works well after the pre-chorus. So yeah, I fully, like, as you were describing that makes a total sense to me. I totally
think
agree
I'm
with
a
that.
different mentality of looking towards you. I learned something today, kids.
But I do, like, I kind of take that same approach too sometimes, because if I have, a lot of times I have an idea of like a story I want to tell.
Right.
And that comes kind of before the melody. But if that happens in that sequence, I have a hard time fitting it into a song that sounds like something people would want to listen to.
Right.
Yeah, and there's it's one thing to sit down and write out something, or write some kind of story.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to make that fit into what works for music.
Mm.
And then on top of that, I'm talking like I have like albums going in the but on top of that, then you have to worry about, is it something people are going to listen to? You can fit the song into this, the story into the song, but what if it's not? It doesn't work. You might have got your point across, but the song may not. No one may give a damn about the song. Something may not catch them.
Right.
The instrumentals might be great, but there's no melody to the. Well, there's always going to be a melody, but there's no catch to the song. It's not. There's no point to grab them.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think that's why the simplest songs in the world work.
Right.
Repetition makes the average person remember it.
Mm.
That's why, simple pop songs and rock songs and whatever get so big at the end of the day, because there's something about them that's super catchy and not real hard to think about. Sweet Caroline is not the greatest opus ever written by someone, but everybody sings along to it because it's very simple and easy to remember. And it has a very repetitive refrain to it. And that's all music, kind of, but you can either write something simple. This past video thing is really messing with me. Hearing myself talk for a second.
It's like when you're on a phone with somebody and you can hear them, like you can hear your own voice a second
later.
hate
that.
I
That
don't know what
drives me
happened there in our
nuts.
live video, but I think it recorded 30 seconds of us at the beginning and just stopped. And
It's just looping.
It's looping itself. It's fine. I hope the mics picked that up. That'll be great. What was that background noise? Don't worry about it. It's just me talking to myself. In pastime, it really is a Spaceballs moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess, talking to you about this stuff actually might give me a little, once in a while I need a push. It's, he sent me stuff and I just feel like I was sitting on it. He could have used it. He could have sent that to any number of the many lyricists we know out there. Dave especially. He's in a band with Dave Z. And Dave can write. He's seen it. Dave can write in the moment while they're recording.
Yeah.
I'm not a go to the
done
studio
that.
and write it out.
I'm not like that.
We've done that. we were working on a song. This was a couple weeks ago. We were working on this new Lisdexia song, and as we were jamming the instrumental version of this song, Dave was sitting outside, typing lyrics in his phone, and he had the whole song written within the 5 minutes we were jamming the song in the practice space.
He gets the ideas, and he's a wordsmith that way. Whereas I need time to process, and sometimes I take too much time.
Yeah.
Makes me jealous.
Right.
I sometimes regret that I missed out on really getting into that in my 20s when I would have had more free time to spend on it.
Right.
Because now I don't have young kids anymore or anything, but I mean, I have a busy life.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to spend time just really being alone with stuff like that.
Exactly,
anymore.
yeah.
And then I find
when you have that time, you're too exhausted.
Yep. Or we're trying to get this kind of stuff done or things of that nature. So it's a lot of, ifs and maybes, but maybe this is our year. We got to get that country song done.
Pickle shots and
Pickle
golf
shots
carts.
and golf carts. A song created through, as everybody's the hates of AI these days. Our friend's not a songwriter, but he typed one in about our time that we spent on the campground Craft Haven, and it came out like this perfect summertime country song about the stuff that we do there, and it's pretty decent for being AI.
I've heard a couple of those, and it's like, well, as horrible as I feel about this method, like, hey, that actually isn't bad.
Well, and we talked about it, like, there's no reason we shouldn't take it, because he typed in what he wanted the lyrics to be, and it figured out this country melody.
Use it as a tool for creativity.
We were like, you know what? As far as this goes, he wrote that. He technically, according to the site he used, he actually has documentation that says he owns that song, which is weird because I thought that was the whole point of AI, that no one owns anything.
Right.
But he basically said, I want you, if you guys want to take this and do it. So we keep talking about not only recording it, this guy's got ideas for a music video in the back.
Oh, I got
ideas. And stuff. And I think that would be a fun way, even though that song's done,
right?
Technically.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun way maybe to get me rolling back into it.
Yeah.
Like just recording
it. Yeah, why not? At least you start flexing those muscles.
And the people down there at that campground that we see every year, it doesn't ever have to be heard by anybody else, but they'll love the shit out of that song. So we'll see how it goes.
Cool. Well, I gotta run. I
absolutely,
hate to be that guy.
Nope.
But...
Hey, it is good to see you, man. It's good to have you here.
And hey, when you're ready to write more,
there it is.
If you need any, I don't want to say, like, I don't want to mess with
collaboration,
your song. Collaboration, or like just any ideas to get you going, like to keep you
absolutely
to have accountability, or like, you know, how have you gotten past this hurdle? Like, I'd love to, like,
I shall take you up on said advice you're offering ahead of time, because I'm sure I certainly should. I don't want to ever be the guy who sits and doesn't ask for help.
Right.
You know, that's just not how it is.
And Jake, good to see you.
Thanks
good
for
to finally meet in person.
I
see Bob tagging you all the time. So.
Well, folks, I guess that's it for the first episode of 2025. We want to thank our good friend Chris Scheler here for coming on and letting us know what his thing was and how things are, and cluing me in on some stuff I didn't know about, which is always good. I like the history of it. But other than that, once again, as always, I'm Bob.
And I'm Jake.
And we have been
Nailed It the podcast.
We'll see you next time.
See you.
Thank you.
And we're up.
Sorry to be abrupt.
No,
all
dude,
good.
that's
Nailed it.